Hello and welcome into the Monday, August 2nd version of the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. My name is Daniel Dopp. I am joined by Miller Lite Mike.
That's me.
Future Olympian in training Field Yates. How you doing,
What sport?
Field?
I'm doing great. What sport?
TBD, I think.
Yeah.
TBD. What is
Lacrosse.
that? I don't know that sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Game
is
of
your
the
best
future.
sport? What is your best sport?
None.
None?
No, I played golf yesterday and I set a course record for most shots.
Nice.
okay.
Which
Okay.
is
That's fair.
yeah.
I'm curious what that would be though. Like just pickup game. You see pickup games going on all these different fields and courts. What are you picking?
Ooh man, maybe
What are you jumping into? Because you know you're going to be good.
maybe paddle tennis. I don't know. I'm not.
Ooh,
listen,
yeah?
I'm not good. I'm not good at sports.
Me either. I love sports, any
Yeah,
sport.
yeah.
But I'm not good at any.
I'm okay at some stuff.
I like pickleball and cornhole. Those are my two
I'm
sports.
terrible at cornhole. I love cornhole.
There's a
but I'm so
subjective
bad at it.
discussion about whether cornole is a sport or not. We can table that for now.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
anyway.
All right, we had a big
Wow.
weekend. We had some real football here,
we did.
gents.
Yeah.
A lot of things to be able to talk about. We're going to jump right in because rumor has it Tom Brady's back to football.
Yes.
How exciting is that?
Yeah, and I wanted to bring this up on the show today, and I know there are some people that hear Tom Brady and they're immediately like, oh my God, Tom Brady again. But guys, this got weird. Tom Brady was away from training camp for like 2 weeks, and I get it. He's 45. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, but players don't just walk away from training camp and have such a mysterious absence surrounding them and have it not be a story. He is, when he's last season led the NFL in both passing yards and passing touchdowns. Like Brady's still at the peak of his powers or close to it. But it's a reminder, I thought, that Brady returns to the Bucs or will be there if he's not already on the practice field when we're having this conversation. Will be on the practice field in just a couple of hours. But it's a good way to bring about where Brady's at right now stock-wise, because there was this mystery, this cloud of uncertainty surrounding him for a couple of weeks. And now Tom Brady is back. But let's talk about what Tom Brady returns to. Tom Brady returns to a Buccaneers offense that, as we know, is going to have either a less than 100% Chris Godwin or at the very least a 100%, but still coming off of an ACL tear in December of last year. I'm optimistic on Chris Godwin. I've been very clear about that, but the offensive line is a conversation. Ryan Jensen was the only interior starter from last year's team. He could be out for multiple months, about the entire year. Tristan Wirfs, their all-pro right tackle, he's dealing with an oblique injury right now. Aaron Stinney, who was a backup guard who might have played for them given the uncertainty surrounding their interior offensive line, tore his ACL. He's now out for the year. I have not yet moved Tom Brady from my 5th overall ranking amongst quarterbacks, but the gap between him and Lamar at number 4 has grown for me, and I'm considering it whether it's Jalen Hurts or Kyler Murray leapfrogging Tom Brady.
I want to ask a question before you jump in, Mike, because if I remember correctly, Fields, your tier 1 of quarterbacks is 4 guys, right? So Brady is
5.
So Brady was the end of your tier 1.
Yeah, and he might still be in it, but it's making me, these things, as they continue to pile up, make me more nervous.
Sure.
And, fantasy football, we have analytics, we have the tape, we have just the discourse, but sometimes it's just like, what are your emotions telling you? And if you're not slightly more nervous about Tom Brady than you were at the beginning of the offseason, as an example, then I'm not sure you've been paying attention to everything that's taking place, Mike.
Yeah, first of all, I understand why he needed a break. I mean, he had the second most pass attempts in NFL history last season, and he's 45 years old. Take a break, man. We totally
He had a 40-day retirement this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understandable after this
deserved it.
season.
Deserved those 4
for
days.
sure. So, look, I already had him QB8, most of the offseason. He was QB3 last season, and he had the second most pass attempts in NFL history, led pretty much every passing category, and still couldn't get into that top 2. Coaching change. We just talked about the concerns with the O-line and the pass catchers. Gronk obviously no longer there. So him coming down a little bit from that top 3 makes sense, right? We already kind of played that into the rankings. I think it's already baked into ADP and the ranks. And we saw that in our marathon draft where I got him in the 13th round, right? So it's not like he cost you a lot. If you wait a quarterback, he is a fine target.
And just last thing, and this is sort of implicit and obvious given the fact that he returned, but when there was that 10-day or 2-week period where he was gone, if you had your drafter in that and you're like, wait, Tom Brady is not back and we don't know for certain when he will be back, can I even draft Tom Brady? The answer at the time was probably yes. The answer now is definitely yes. It's just a matter of whether you feel slightly less optimistic. I am a quarterback 5. I'm at top in terms of our rankers here at ESPN where Brady sits. But it could be a different year for Tom Brady than it was each of the past 2.
Well,
slightly.
Staying within that NFC South, we're going to talk about Michael Thomas, who right now currently going in the 8th round of drafts, wide receiver 27. Some other wide receivers that are there. Field, we just talked about Tom Brady. Chris Godwin, you look at Darnell Mooney, you look at Gabe Davis. with Michael Thomas battling a hamstring injury and kind of dealing with some things, has that changed any of the way that you look at Michael Thomas here in this draft season?
I'm not sure it's changed anything, but it's a reminder of why there will be trepidation of taking Michael Thomas in the first place. So Dennis Allen said yesterday that Michael Thomas is dealing with, quote, a little bit of a hamstring. We don't know if that means he'll be out for a week, a day. Stay tuned. We'll have more updates as they become available. But if the anti-Michael Thomas argument was based on a few things, and Mike can get into the changing offense and the more competition amongst wide receivers, but part of it, at least the crux of it in many people's eyes, was he's not going to stay healthy. And a little hamstring could literally mean one day. But if this little hamstring lingers for 2 weeks and it's week one of the regular season and Wednesday practice, Michael Thomas is limited and we don't know whether he's going to play or not, then the people that drafted him are going to be saying, why did I do this again? Shame on me for not knowing better. Tomorrow morning, we could lead the show saying Michael Thomas returned to practice and had 5 touchdowns in 7-on-7 drills. This is just an example of the reasons why, if you are anti-Michael Thomas, a big part of them is the possibility of him getting hurt.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't think people realize this. The last time Michael Thomas had a fantasy relevant reception, Deuce McAllister was their running back.
That's not true, is it?
No, it was 600.
That was for 2 seconds.
For a second, I was like, wait, what?
It was, but seriously, it was 617 days ago. So you thought about it.
I
For like
did.
A half second, you're like, wait
listen,
a minute.
Deuce,
Maybe it was a long time
I
ago.
love Deuce, and I'm like, wait, Deuce has had like a pretty darn successful media career already.
He's
How
been
is he?
retired for like 10 years.
Yeah,
Like, it's not even close.
Where are we at?
But that it's just, I mean, I'm exaggerating, obviously, but it's been a long time. Like, it just expect him to come back over, almost 2 years later and be a fantasy star is going to be tough, right? So I think we baked in a lot of that risk, right? Like, I have him 29th on my board, and I'm kind of high on him, right? And that's with a pretty conservative projection. I'm at 819 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's not super high, but look, he was really good for them 4 years, top 7 every year, has had the injury issues, and to your point, no more Drew Brees. The offensive line is okay. It's not as dominant as it was a few years ago. And he does have a lot more competition with Kamara and Chris Olave, who I love. Obviously, Jarvis Landry. And to be honest with you, I have not drafted a lot of Michael Thomas this year. Chris Olave, I've drafted a lot. He goes a lot later. That's the guy that's on my radar.
Pedigree and upside. Last thing I'll say on this is roster construction matters a lot in fantasy football. There are a few wide receivers that we have question marks about them coming into the season. Some of them are major names. I'm not sure that out of my draft, I can roster multiple of, just as an example, Chris Godwin, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins. Those are just 3 of the names. But if you draft one of them, I'm not saying you immediately cross the other guys off your board, but because of the injury risk involving Godwin and Michael Thomas, and because of the suspension for DeAndre Hopkins, just be mindful of these kind of things as you're building your board. It's one thing if you've already got Keenan Allen and somebody else who's like, money in the bank locked up. Deontay Johnson, as an example, is your top 2 wide receivers, or Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams. You can throw the dart there, but if you've been a little bit more risk forward in your draft so far, Michael Thomas is a risk just based off the health.
Yeah, if I'm taking a risk in the 8th round on an injured wide receiver, though, right now, I'm definitely drafting Chris Godwin over Michael Thomas.
As am I. Yeah.
So, agreed.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about some strategy surrounding the preseason. Here we are. Every year within fantasy, we got to go through the preseason. We got to nitpick some things. We got to go through and find what it is that we're deciphering from everything. And I want to know, when I'm watching the preseason, I am looking at backups. How much are they playing? And guys that we have question marks, second stringers, guys that maybe have as a wide receiver 3 or an RB2. How are they playing when they get time out there on the field? What is it that I'm watching from the starters when they do have that brief window of action while they're out there for a little bit? When you guys are watching preseason football here from a fantasy perspective, what are your takeaways? What are you looking for?
One thing that matters to me, Mike, you go first.
First team snaps.
Specifically with the quarterback, right? Like if your first team quarterback is out there, who's playing with him? That's what matters to me.
Yeah.
And if a guy that we're optimistic about hasn't shared the field with the quarterback, I'm less optimistic about that player implicitly.
Yeah, and it's a rare instance where a guy being inactive is actually a positive, right? We don't like that if we're talking about in season, we're like, hey, he's going to miss some games probably. He has a history of that. We don't like that. In the preseason, it's like, okay, well, they're resting the guy. They're resting.
If you're being rested.
Fantasy superstar number 1, 2, 3, 4. And this guy, interesting. Maybe he's their lead back. And we saw that with Dameon Pierce, for example. If Houston would be one where you thought, right, we'll get to it. But, in that situation, you might think, they have to get this rookie reps. But if they're already sitting him, that could be a sign that he's going to be a big part of the offense. That's the kind of thing I'm looking at. Who's playing with the starters? And also the other thing I would add in there is there's nothing more important other than that, I think, than our beat reporters, our NFL Nation team, right? What are they seeing? What are they hearing? That's what I'm watching during the preseason. That might not mean, that might not relate much to what's happening on the field, but that's just part of it. It's still going on during the preseason. They're still there. They're in talking to the coaches, talking to the players. What we learn from them is huge right now, and that could kind of point me toward adjusting my rankings.
Yeah, and I think that there are some players. So as an example, James Cook, who there's been a lot of, I think, legitimate buzz about going into the season.
Yep.
It was basically the Devin Singletary show alongside Josh Allen, who we'll talk about in just a minute, on Saturday against the Broncos. James Cook's being drafted as like RB41. I'm not saying you have to just throw him off your draft boards, but if you have a player who's being drafted in the top 25 of his position who is not running with the ones, it's a problem. So I'm taking stock of that like, hey, I think James Cook could eventually have a role in this Bills offense, but it may be that it's not for a while, or it may be that he's a guy that you can only really play him in games in which you expect the Bills to be either in a tightly contested matchup or playing from behind. And this year, I'm not sure they'll be playing from behind against anybody.
Yeah.
Based off of preseason utilization. It seems like at the beginning of the year, Devin Singletary will be the number one back in that Buffalo Bills offense.
Yep. Looks like the takeaway. All right. Let's talk about some of these preseason notes and get through a few things. And Field, I'm going to start with you. Okay.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot to be able to say this, but we watched Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes both lead their team on some really nice first. I think Patrick Mahomes only played the first quarter action there. What did you see from those two guys, from their offenses? Did anything change? Can they be better than what they were last year in fantasy?
So I think it's going to be hard for Patrick Mahomes to surpass the offensive proficiency without Tyreek Hill, but I thought that the game against the Commanders at least helped people. Like, I think sometimes the narrative just goes a little bit too far. It's like Patrick Mahomes without Tyreek Hill, like this Chiefs offense could be in real trouble. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. Like, isn't the point of a franchise-altering quarterback that he is the rising tide that floats all the boats around him? Mm-hmm. And on Saturday, he just dusted that Commanders defense, which is supposed to be good, right? Even without a couple of the key players. Aren't they supposed to be like semi-respectable? The Chiefs offense is a well-oiled machine. And just if you had any concerns about Patrick Mahomes coming into this season, I think A, they were probably unrooted in the first place. Second, B is that like Patrick Mahomes is still going to be able to put up numbers with, he could have, Mike and I and you as the wide receivers. He'd probably still throw for like at least 250. So that was my thought on Patrick Mahomes. 2 touchdown passes. Awesome. And then on Josh Allen, he didn't play a ton. Really easy. Didn't need to. No, but really easy day for them at the office. My big takeaway, Mike, is that we've been talking all preseason for many, many years about how we prefer not to draft quarterbacks early, especially as early as Josh Allen is currently going at 21st overall in terms of ADP. It's fine. He's not going to lose your league because of that. I do think, though, there's a chance that by the middle of this season, Josh Allen looks like the runaway MVP. It's going to be hard for him to justify that 21st overall pick in fantasy. He'd have to be so much better, but it wouldn't stun me at the end of the year, and Saturday only fortified this, if Josh Allen has a healthy margin over the rest of the quarterback field, because no player has an easier path to fantasy points on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I was kind of distracted. I was just imagining our conversation earlier where we're looking for a game to play with people, like trying to pick a game, and like Patrick Mahomes is throwing passes, and I want to jump in there and play some wide receiver. So
yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say go against him.
Well, no. See, I was thinking about it, but then I'm like, that would be fun, and you couldn't pass that up. But then, what if there's like NFL players on the other side? I want to get run over, right? That's that'll mess you up for a while. So anyway, what were we talking about?
We're talking about Josh Allen. It just comes so easily to him, right? And the scary part is they've got 2 great wide receivers. They've got good complementary pieces amongst the pass catchers, Isaiah McKenzie and Dawson Knox. We obviously have him and his family in our thoughts right now after losing his brother tragically. Sure. Good offensive line. Maybe not a dominant offensive line, but a good Bills offensive line. And Josh Allen, the only athletic comparison I can make is Cam Newton at his prime. Mm-hmm. And we know that Cam at his prime for season upon season upon season was being very much discussed in that first overall quarterback discussion. And Josh Allen's going to be there for a while, so get used to it.
Yeah, and 2 things here, one on each guy. So neither guy was in a great situation last year for a variety of reasons. It was mostly defensive adjustments, right? So Josh Allen, what did he do? He had a career high in rushing yards last year. He was actually below average in yards per attempt, and completion rate was still by far the number 1 scoring fantasy quarterback, right? So his situation's still very good. I think their offensive line maybe takes a little bit of a step back, but overall, the way they're going to throw the ball, how good he is, what he adds with his legs, still in his prime, a lot to like there. And then for Mahomes, I don't know if we've ever seen a team run cover 2 that much against an offense in league history, right? I mean, that data only really reliable data only goes back so far, but we haven't seen it in a long time. It was like way above second place. And you saw his average depth of throw plummet last year, right? I mean, that offense was limited in terms of the big plays they can make. And again, what did he do? Career high in rushing yards, was still a top 3 fantasy quarterback, 37 touchdowns, almost 5,000 yards. I'm sorry about Tyreek Hill, awesome playmaker. I don't think it's going to matter much. He's just too good. It's a pass-heavy offense. He has Andy Reid there.
Thank you.
I'm just not worried about it. He's been my number 2 quarterback all offseason. Allen 1, Mahomes 2. I don't go out of my way to reach on quarterbacks, but if they fall into your lap, you should be perfectly content striking on either guy.
The question we have on the screen says, how good do they have to be to justify a 3rd or 4th round pick? I think they would have to be really they would have to be so unbelievably good to justify me taking someone in the 3rd with how deep that quarterback position is. It's tough from that standpoint.
But that would be result oriented, not process oriented, right? That would be if they finish with 80 more fantasy points than quarterback 3. And Mike does the projections. I don't do projections, but I would project that Justin Herbert is going to be a lot closer than 80 points worse over the course of the season, right?
Yeah, right. It's Allen is about 70 ahead of 10th place, just to give you an idea of your first best versus last, and like tight end might be 110 between the first tight end and the 10th tight end. So
wasn't it?
That's why we're going a little earlier on tight ends.
Wasn't it like 110 between like 2 years ago, like Kelsey and the 3rd tight end?
Right.
So again, that would only be. I don't think I would not personally justify. I think it would be you got lucky and the result favored you. I don't think it's a process-based argument.
But I don't think taking either guy in the 4th round is going to crush you by any means, because you will have an edge over everybody else at quarterback, right? So it is justifiable. We're not telling you if you do this, it's over. You're just hurting yourself.
No.
We personally wouldn't do it. I'd maybe wait one more round, but you can do it, and still build a very good team.
41 and 42 of my big board is where those two guys sit.
I'm almost exactly the same.
If you go early, you're just making sure that you're really working the waiver wire to be able to get that value passed up on skill position later on, or some trades. By the way, trading's an art. We've talked about this. All right. Antonio Gibson.
Painting was a gift, Todd.
Wow. Returns the opening kickoff. In case you were wondering, and if you things you're looking for in preseason games, starting running backs that return opening kickoffs is one of them for me. And then we watched Brian Robinson come out and get the first 3 carries of the game. It looked like Antonio Gibson was basically just playing that J.D. McKissick role. By the way, J.D. McKissick was hurt for this game. Has Antonio Gibson not slid down far enough? Has he slid far enough and he is properly being evaluated based on his ADP with the way that this committee seems to be shaking out? Because I am left not feeling at all comfortable drafting Antonio Gibson as my RB2 after watching this preseason game. Mike Clay.
Yeah, I'm definitely worried. I thought a lot about this yesterday, and it got me into the rabbit hole of looking at his efficiency, right? Yeah. Just looking, we know he's been a high volume player and he's been productive in fantasy, but is it just volume, or is it that he's really been an effective player? And honestly, as a rusher and a receiver, his efficiency doesn't jump off the page, right? Nope, average in yards per carry, below average in yards after contact, yards per target's below average. You can go deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole again, but he doesn't really jump off the page. And I guess I thought the team thought more of him, and maybe we didn't. When a team takes a running back on day 2, right? It probably should have been more of a red flag to us,
1000%.
Right? So I'm a little concerned about it. But I like Gibson. I want him to keep developing into a star in this league. And frankly, at this point, I hope he gets traded. But honestly, that's just my gut.
Wouldn't count on him. Wouldn't count on him.
I wouldn't either. I mean, he's only in his 2nd year. He's a day 2 pick. He's not super expensive. They want depth at running back, but that's what I want. They should do what I want.
Okay.
I want my
GM Clay.
Exactly. I want Atlanta to go get him and make him that feature back, right?
We've
already put like
with
12 running back. Josh Jacobs is going there. Damian Harris.
Right. We have a couple others that we'll discuss. I've heard of like a Najee Harris rumor. Is that accurate or not? Yeah.
Well, no, they have because they have Jalen Warren now and Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland and Mateo Durant. They're good, right?
They're good. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Barry Sanders looked great on Hard Knocks.
He did look fantastic.
Yeah. But you asked the start of this was, hey, does the preseason matter or not? And this would be an example of something that, if things change and Antonio Gibson has 25 carries in week 1, I'll take the L, because right now, if I had to make a list of shrug emoji players, Antonio Gibson's on it. How many guys are on that list? I don't know the answer, but there's a few of them. Clyde Edwards-Helaire also there for me. DK Metcalf is on there for different reasons, right? Like, I could see DK Metcalf doing DK Metcalf things and being silly good because he's DK Metcalf, but also with a less than inspiring quarterback situation, things could go south. But Antonio Gibson is feeling like the captain of that team right now because where he was going early in drafts, people that got ahead of the curve and were drafting in early August or even before then, is a player that, as you mentioned, has to be like a low end RB2, maybe in like a 12 or 14 team league. Yeah, he would be a middle of the pack 14 in a 14 team league RB2. So you're going to have some confidence in him. And right now it seems like Antonio Gibson is going to be splitting duties amongst carries, and by splitting, he could be the change of pace back to Brian Robinson, who got the first 3 carries in the game against the Chiefs. Beyond that, we know that his passing game work is going to be tied to whether J.D. McKissic is available or not, and J.D. McKissic is available right now.
Is it too much to read in the fact that not only was J.D. McKissic trying to go to another team, but the Commanders made sure that he could not leave, and they kept him? Like, is it too much to read into that with the idea
No, they freaking love the guy.
Right?
If he's healthy, he's going to play a lot. And by the way, they should love him. He's really good.
He's great.
Moreover, a couple of things to throw in here that are not, statistics-based or what have you. Antonio Gibson fumbles the ball way too much. And there is nothing that quarterbacks, the coaches hate more than running backs fumbling the ball. They just hate it. We've seen Bill Belichick yank guys from games. We've seen Coach Bruce Arians yank guys from games. Like, they have little patience for a lot of things. They have no patience for fumbling. It's been a problem for Antonio Gibson. Moreover, in a league in which many teams are going running back by committee, the Commanders are just doubling down on it because even though Antonio Gibson's season-long years look okay last year, and even though he was doing it while playing through that shin splint, that only fortified their belief that we need to go running back by committee because we don't want to get into a situation when we're relying upon a guy's got a broken shin. And I think, Mike, it's important that you brought out, that you shine the light on what the numbers tell you is that, and this is a battle that I fought with Matthew Stefani at the end of last year, is that I just said, maybe this is because I had him in the War Room League and he really disappointed me. I said, when I watch Antonio Gibson, I see good. I don't see great. I don't see great. And there are a lot of running backs that come out of nowhere and look effective in short spurts. But the great ones, you can kind of tell just how different they are. I didn't see it with Antonio Gibson. And perhaps the destiny of this backfield is that Brian Robinson leads the way with 175 carries. Antonio Gibson has 110 or 125 carries. And J.D. McKissic has 60 catches this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's starting to get a New England feel to it, whereas maybe Robinson is Damian Harris and Gibson is Ramondre Stevenson and James White, J.D. McKissic, of course. So kind of has a little feel to that, right? Yeah. And by the way, guess who's getting the goal line carries? Probably the 225-pound rookie who had 18 touchdowns last year.
Who's a good player.
So, yeah. So, and of course, that would be Brian Robinson. So, yeah, it's tough right now. We've been low on him pretty much since they drafted him, I think. But
yeah, he needs a ranking adjustment for me.
Yeah, he is trending down. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Christian Kirk. We're talking about some good performances here in the preseason, Mike, and you've talked about both Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk. Right now, Christian Kirk, I want to look at this, is being drafted as wide receiver 42. Okay, wide receiver 42 in the 12th round. He was targeted on 5 of Trevor Lawrence's first 8 passes. And I got the stat from Kyle. I really like this. 29 wide receivers that averaged 7+ targets last year. There were 29 of them. 28 finished better than Christian Kirk's current ADP. Do you think that Christian Kirk is going to see enough volume in this offense that if he was able to see those 7+ targets, people are drafting him well below his floor, and there is still a lot of value left for Christian Kirk here in this offense?
Yeah, I have a number for you. $72 million, as in
Thank
how
you.
much was on his deal, right?
Yes.
4 years, $72 million, obviously a decent amount of guarantees. The guy's still in his prime at 25 years old. I worry a little bit about his ceiling, right? Even if this offense has a full-on breakout, which is possible. Trevor Lawrence, first overall pick last year. I've talked a lot about that this offseason. It's possible he make a big leap. He's never hit 80 catches, 1,000 yards, or 7 touchdowns so far, right? So a lot of people did scratch their heads when he signed that deal. But again, he's still in his prime. He's positioned to be number 1. Trevor Lawrence's first 8 passes in that preseason game, 5 went to Christian Kirk, and he's going to be a big part of this offense. They added a lot of skill guys this year, but there's no one that's it's not like they have a Chase T. Higgins, right? Like Kirk should be their 1. You have Marvin Jones, who's 32 on the other side, probably a rotation at number 3. You have Evan Ingram, who's been up and down through his career, ETN out of the backfield. So Kirk really could demand a ton of targets and catch 80 plus footballs in this offense. But yeah, little worried about the upside, especially in the touchdown department, if they don't make that big leap.
Yeah, I'm just so I think one of the deterrents for the value of Christian Kirk in some people's eyes was that, well, they did also sign Evan Ingram and Zay Jones, and they have Travis Etienne finally healthy, and Marvin Jones still on the roster. Is that maybe this is kind of like the Patriots last year, where they added a ton of players in free agency, and as far as fantasy was concerned, it was just a couple of guys that really mattered, right? Like some guys just aren't going to meet expectations when you pay them a ton of money coming into the season. So I just think that it's just a reminder that, as Mike has mentioned many times, second-year quarterbacks often see a leap. The Jaguars' schedule is one of the very few in the league that actually look good this year. We don't need Christian Kirk to become, he doesn't need to become a top 15 wide receiver to justify what we are sort of suggesting is possible right now.
No.
But if you go heavy on running backs and your wide receiver 3 coming out of your draft is Christian Kirk, you'll be okay. Worst case scenario is he flames and you turn one of those running backs into an upgraded wide receiver.
Love that.
And I don't think he's going to flame.
Yep. Love that Kirk Lawrence late round stack.
Yeah, agreed.
That could be a league winner if Lawrence breaks out.
Really, really great. All right. Another wide receiver that we liked here in the preseason, Josh Palmer. We've been talking about him a bunch.
Let's go.
The Chargers ran almost 75% of their plays out of 3 wide receiver. 75% of their passing plays were 3 wide receiver sets last year. We think that Josh Palmer is going to get a ton of run this year, Mike.
But just to be clear, that number I think sounds like a lot. It's not
75%.
No, that's
below league average.
It was 18th. NFL average was 73.1%.
Yeah, but
that number on passing plays, like,
you're exactly right. Yeah,
it's not that much.
You're exactly right. But the thing is, he was the 4 last year, right? Jalen Guyton was the 3. Palmer only played 60+% of the snaps in 3 games, scored a touchdown all 3 games, was good in fantasy in all 3 games. So that's why we're optimistic about a leap this year for the last year's 3rd round pick.
If they are passing, there's a 75% chance there'll be 3 wide receivers in the field. We think Joshua Palmer will be one of them this year from that standpoint. So with that being said, 3 catches on 4 targets for 75 yards and a touchdown. Again, it's in preseason, so everything is taken with a grain of salt. But did you leave this field? Did you leave watching this performance feeling any different about Josh Palmer, or is he pretty solidified in your rankings?
No, I feel pretty good about it for Dynasty, right? I mean, he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. I think he's got a chance to be a really good player in the NFL. Who did he catch touchdown pass from?
Easton Stick, I believe.
Easton Stick, that's correct. He's ahead of Justin Herbert this year on the
He is not.
depth chart.
No.
He's not great. One of the better names. I would say he's ahead of Herbert in the
Great name.
like
Okay,
best names list in the league. But
Chase Daniel, who's behind him as well.
Easton Stick
so-
probably in the practice squad.
Got it. Okay, so 3rd string quarterback. That to me was notable, right? Like I'm excited about Josh Palmer, but again, he's running with the backups. That was the first thing that we talked about. Just what are you evaluating in preseason? It's who's playing with the 1st string offense. This was not the 1st string offense. He's a good flash player, and I do think that. And I'm not suggesting this, but Mike Williams we know is under contract for 3 more years. If in the next couple of years, as Keenan Allen crosses a 30-year-old threshold, his value to the Chargers changes, well then, and you know what? For Dynasty, who cares? Justin Herbert's 23. Even if it's 3 years from now that Josh Palmer becomes a starting wideout in the Los Angeles Chargers offense, that's valuable. For redraft, I'm a little bit more off the scent. He's a perfectly reasonable late-round flyer target, or maybe an insurance policy if you have. Even if you don't have Mike Williams or Keenan Allen, I think this year, though, the ceiling is probably fairly limited.
There's guys you just love. You don't want to start them, but you just feel good having them on your bench.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer, one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, was there a single offense last year? Was there one? And maybe I'm just forgetting it. Was there one offense last year where 3 wide receivers were consistently inside our top 30?
The only time that happened, I think, was Tampa Bay when Antonio Brown was
It does happen sometimes.
It happens occasionally,
And if there's a team that could do it,
this might be it.
It might be the Chargers, because keep in mind, too, I mean, they have Austin Eckler out of the backfield, but, I mean, they don't have a tight end that you think is going to demand a lot of targets. You'll have a handful, but if a team's going to do it, it could be. And it'll come down to talent, right? If Palmer is up to the task, they're going to have to get him the football 6-7 times a game, and maybe he does end up on the flex or wide receiver 3 radar.
Mike Lovie Smith said that they wanted the Texans specifically wanted to get a better look at the other running backs, and so Dameon Pierce did not play. We like DNPs in the preseason when it comes to rookies from this perspective, correct?
Yeah, definitely feeling a little better about him. I mean, it's not a sure thing right now, so we don't want to get too carried away. You know, I like to make micro adjustments to the rankings, and of course, he is working his way up, and you definitely feel better about him as their potential lead back. But Marlon Mack will probably play somewhat of a role out of the gate, and Rex Burkhead was, not super efficient, but a reliable player for them last season. You expect him to have a role in passing situations. Again, keep this in mind. And again, this was a knock on Antonio Gibson coming to the league, and he's seen a ton of volume the last 2 years. But in college, Pierce has never in a season saw more than 106 carries or 23 targets. So is he going to make it a full season, as a feature back?
Right.
Maybe not, right? So just keep that in mind. Let's not get carried away and rank this guy, as 20th or just really blow it out of proportion and draft him against other solidified number one running backs, right? So again, the ADP is starting to spike. You're starting to see that in recent drafts. We got to be a little careful, but there's reason for optimism.
You just mentioned that there are players you love having on your roster, even if you know that they're no sure thing to contribute right away. And this would be an example of it, that I think there's a chance at some point there's a 5-game stretch where Dameon Pierce is in your lineup or close to it, maybe in a flex spot if you're in a deeper league. Maybe during weeks in which there were a lot of buys, he creeps into the RB2 radar if things break in his favor. I also think there's a chance that week 1, Marlon Mack plays 25% of the snaps, and Rex Burkhead plays 33% of the snaps, and Dameon Pierce plays 40% of the snaps in an offense that is not necessarily great. So it may take a little time, but this was a sneaky good sign for Dameon Pierce.
Don't forget about Dare Ogunbowale.
Yeah.
Might get a couple snaps too. So.
Yeah, I like Dare.
That's right. I just got a rare Dare Ogunbowale numbered 10 out of 300 in my DraftKings Rainmakers.
Oh, yeah?
We'll talk about the Rainmakers a little bit later on.
Wow, make it rain.
All right, Field. This would not be a fantasy focus unless we made sure to talk about a backup tight end coming out of the preseason.
I was going to say, I'm swimming against the tide here for once.
But someone caught your eye.
Would you say it's very likely we're going to talk about a tight end right now?
Pretty likely.
Okay.
Dynasty talk here for a second.
Yeah.
Isaiah Likely, who is the 4th-round pick for the Baltimore Ravens, who has absolutely smashed during the preseason so far. He's got 12 catches through 3 games. Certainly looks the part. Now, there's a very obvious roadblock here. Isaiah Likely plays behind Mark Andrews, perhaps the best tight end on the planet right now. So definitely not a guy that I have on my redraft radar, but just another dynasty stash. I'm assuming he was snatched up in most dynasty league drafts that have already taken place up to this point. But a compelling name, not because Mark Andrews is going anywhere anytime soon, but this offense, there are offenses that have found ways to run the passing game through their tight end. And maybe Isaiah Likely is a useful part of this offense a year from now where it's very, very uncommon that we have 2 top 20 tight ends in the same offense. But this one has my attention.
Yes. If there's a team that's going to do it in the league this season, it would be Baltimore.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean when they had Hayden Hurst, he was playing enough, right?
Yeah. And keep in mind, Likely just basically played slot. Like we talked about that with Mike Gesicki and
he looks
Kyle
like
Pitts.
Mike Gesicki.
Right. He basically just played the slot in college anyway and had massive target share, 25% last year, huge production, the best yards per out run in this class. He was super effective, and they are weak at wide receiver, frankly, objectively speaking, right? So Andrews could play tight end, Likely could play slot receiver when they're throwing the ball and play a lot. So again, cautious optimism with this guy. I agree with you. It's more of a dynasty hold or a 2 tight end league hold.
Yeah, and this is I was sitting there I'm the one saying Isaiah Likely should make it onto the note tomorrow. What has gotten into me? More so just at some point, he could get cut. Well, that would surprise me, but he could have 3 catches in the first half of the season, and I wouldn't be totally stunned. But to Mike's point, if there's a week where all of a sudden Isaiah Likely has 3 catches and a touchdown because he's playing that big slot position, I also wouldn't be surprised by that.
Absolutely.
So, keep him on your radar.
Not advocating for insurance tight ends, but if you do need an insurance option, we do have one.
Yeah, that's right. Because Geico wants to know, how would you like to save some money on car insurance?
Would love it.
Or all insurance. Well, you'd love that. After all, who doesn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all the things in your life, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, RV, even Mike's pool. It can even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage. You could save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you can save.
Football fans, join the next generation of fantasy football with Rainmakers Football, their first ever NFT fantasy game from DraftKings. It's the only NFT fantasy game licensed by the NFLPA, and now you can play all season for millions in prizes by building the ultimate NFT franchise. Right now, everyone can get their first full roster starter pack for free. Playing Rainmakers is simple. Buy, sell, bid, and win player card NFTs of the biggest names in the game through regular drops and auctions on DraftKings Marketplace. Craft lineups of athletes from your NFT collection and earn points for touchdowns, receptions, and more, just like in daily fantasy football. Build your NFT franchise and enter free Rainmakers football contests all season long to compete for millions. The next generation of fantasy sports is here, so download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now. Sign up with the promo code FFF. Click the Rainmakers tile and opt in to get your first card for free. Plus, play for millions in prizes all football season while building the ultimate NFT fantasy franchise with Rainmakers Football. That's promo code FFF. Build, play, win only at DraftKings. Contest entries dependent on type and number of NFTs held. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details.
You nailed that one.
Thanks.
Nice job. It's pretty good.
Appreciate it.
I learned a lot there. Ready to go?
I am. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, the music is still playing. That's why I was
I think I was just
unclear.
waiting.
The show's over. We're just going to chill
we go.
with the music for a half
All right,
hour.
cool.
What are you guys having for lunch today?
I don't
Question.
know. Probably excellence. So,
Oh, we're done.
Oh,
We're
really?
not done.
what? No, we are done.
I thought.
No, we're not done. All right.
I'm confused.
Big head-to-head rankings updates. Let's talk about some guys coming out of this preseason. We look at everything. We're always making tweaks. A couple of guys that we have been looking at in drafts. Dalvin Cook, we've talked about him, and Alvin Kamara with some of the latest news that we got last week from Adam Schefter. It looks like Alvin Kamara, at least now, that timeline keeps being pushed back with where things are at. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Head-to-head rankings between Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara.
So sitting right next to Adam Schefter during our draft was helpful because we learned a lot about
Yes, we
the
did.
Alvin Kamara situation. And again, things could change down the road, but he's feeling confident he will play. So I adjusted my rankings a little bit, and I actually have Kamara one spot ahead of Dalvin Cook now. It is really close. I actually debated it in my head for quite a while, trying to figure out which way to go with this. It is a close call. But look, Kamara has never not been top 10 in fantasy points. He is terrific. Last year, he had a career low in yards per carry and catch rate. Still top 10 fantasy running back. He's going to be a huge part of this offense. We know that. We expect it to be better with Jameis Winston under center for hopefully the whole season. Obviously, remember, they had offensive problems at times last year with Taysom Hill, and Trevor Siemian was under center. So should be a better offense throughout the 2022 season. Dalvin Cook has been top 10 in touches and yards the past 3 seasons. But we know he misses some time.
Yep.
And again, I think with his recent workload, you might see some of these other guys worked in just a little bit more, just a little more than years past. So I'm feeling slightly more confident here than Kamara. That's who I would pick if I was faced with picking one.
Same myself. I think this may be flip-flopped in my current rankings, which are always subject to change. But if I gave you the option to choose which of these players has the better shot at scoring as RB1 this year,
Kamara.
it's not a question,
Yes.
right? It's Alvin Kamara, and there are 2 key categories that he takes the lead over Dalvin Cook in. One, his passing game utilization. At his very best, he actually had back-to-back seasons to begin his career with exactly 81 catches. Dalvin Cook's a good pass catcher, no doubt, that he's talked about the possibility of being more involved in the passing game this year, but more involved could be like 50 catches for him.
Yeah.
That's the floor for Alvin Kamara. And then Alvin Kamara touchdowns are really tough to project. Mike will tell you that more effectively than I could, but he's got a history. Nobody finds the end zone, or at least very few running backs find the end zone as effectively as Alvin Kamara, maybe Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, the 2 to come to mind as being better at it. Whereas Dalvin Cook, if there's one category in his career where he has not yet reached that elite level, it's consistent rushing touchdown production. He's an amazing player, but you have to pick one. I'm leaning towards Alvin Kamara here.
Feels like from that standpoint, Mike, with what you're saying, the floor with Alvin Kamara, even understanding he had so many things that he did not do as well as in years past, his floor is just so high to be a top 10 running back every season of his career so far.
Right, exactly. And we've talked about that, about how much more valuable targets are than carries, right? You get, 3.3 points for a 3-yard carry or 0.4 points for a 4-yard carry, but for a catch, 85% of the time, a running back is going to catch a target, right? It's close to the line of scrimmage. That's a point already.
Yeah, I
so
think
anything else is just a cherry on top.
I believe Kamara's catch percentage was right around 80% for the first 3 years. It was 81 catches
That's
on
about
like
right for a running
100,
back, yeah.
104, and 104 targets. It
Yeah,
was
I think
something
like-
ridiculously
I
consistent.
think it's like 78% is the running back average or something. So,
So
that's
it's like
right on
two
track.
and a half times, and this is a rough estimate. We mentioned this stat from Scott Barrett previously, but it's like around 2.5 times the value in a target versus a carry for a running back. And a very good one for Alvin Kamara, the number might be even higher.
All right, let's talk about some wide receivers field, because while Cooper Kupp right now is our de facto wide receiver one, there is still a conversation. Actually, while he's our wide receiver one, I don't think we could fault anybody if you wanted to take Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase as wide receiver one for that fact.
Yeah.
But with an ESPN ADP, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are back-to-back with each other. Do you have a sense, or do you have a feeling one way or the other after this offseason which way you want to go in drafts?
I mean, I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson, but I'm going to like easily make the case for Jamar Chase too. This is an example of why I believe in tiers versus like player to player ranks. But if I had to split the difference here, I'll go with Justin Jefferson for like sort of a couple pretty basic, simple reasons. He's got a slightly larger sample size and they're both making history, but Justin Jefferson has more receiving yards than any player to the first 2 years of his career in NFL history. Slightly larger sample size, and then he's got less competition for targets, right? Adam Thielen's a really good player, but you don't have T. Higgins opposite of you, and you don't have a really, really dependable third receiver in Tyler Boyd. And I think that the passing game utilization for the tight ends could be similar. I think maybe Irv Smith. I think Irv Smith's ceiling is higher than I believe Hayden Hurst's ceiling is, but it's not like they have a dominant tight end in either passing game. So I will go with Justin Jefferson, but Mike, if you want to make the case for Jamar Chase, by the end of it, I might say, cool, I agree.
No, thanks. I'll go with Jefferson.
I agree.
Look, they're both two of the best players in the NFL, are my 1-2 in dynasty rankings.
Yeah.
Jefferson just is more cemented already. Like he's done it already. He's been that elite player. He's number one in receiving yards. He was first in air yards last year. He was top 5 in end zone targets. He was super productive in fantasy.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase has never finished higher than 18th in targets. Now, it was only one season, and maybe that goes way up this season, but we know what we're getting with Jefferson. We're still learning a little bit on Jamar Chase, was very reliant on elite efficiency and big plays last season. So, again, two right answers, but I'm going to take the guy. I'm not going to overthink it. Like, the guy has already done it. I'm going to go with him.
This is a fun bar debate, but there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
They're both great. If you take either one of them, number 2 overall, I'm not going to sit here and begrudge you for that.
What if you decided to take CeeDee Lamb over Tyreek Hill? Because right now, CeeDee Lamb's going as wide receiver 8, Tyreek going as wide receiver 7, but Tyreek, obviously with the move to a new quarterback, having Tua there. Field, which way do you lean right now?
Yeah, I lean ever so slightly to CeeDee Lamb, and this is sort of the same thing as last year, and as the last debate, I should say. Now, I get there might be some people that have more energy saying, dude, it's Tyreek Hill, $30 million per year wide receiver. The guy's been the most explosive playmaker in the NFL since he got into the league back in 2016. That's fair. This probably just comes down to a couple of things for me. I prefer his quarterback in Dak Prescott over Tua Tagovailoa.
It's not even close. And like, it's nothing against Tua, but like Dak is far and away.
Dak's really good. And then right now we're staring at a Dallas offense that saw a bunch of departures and a Miami offense saw a bunch of arrivals.
Yeah.
So who has a more likely 10 target per game upside? I think the answer is CeeDee Lamb, so I give him the edge over Tyreek Hill.
Agreed. And it might seem like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth because I was just talking about how let's just go with the guy who has done it. But Tyreek Hill has switched offenses, to your point, right? So it is not really the same. It's a huge change for him this season. We talked about this before. He was already very inconsistent last year with Patrick Mahomes, right? He 8 finishes of 40th or worse. And now he goes to a more conservative, perhaps run-first offense without an MVP quarterback. So we did knock him for that, and I do have CeeDee Lamb just ahead. Keep in mind, CeeDee Lamb, 80th percentile or better in yards per target, yards per route run, and receiving yards after the catch last season. Was very effective. The problem has been target share. It has not been there. It wasn't there for Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb last year. That has to change in Dallas.
Right.
If it doesn't change, they need to blow up the offensive play calling. They have to change something. You need to get the ball.
Some might already want that.
Right. Look, you get it if you watch that team. You're like, why are they not getting the ball to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper last year? It didn't never made sense. That has to happen this year. And because of the situation on offense with the injuries and the departures, I think it will happen. So I'm with you. He's already played very well. Entering year 3, former mid-first round pick. Everything kind of sets up for him to have that breakout season. We thought it was coming last year, but there were circumstances. I think it happens this year. If it doesn't, again, it's not. I don't think it's a CeeDee Lamb problem if it doesn't happen this year.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. You don't think it's would you think that's an offense or a Dak Prescott problem?
Not Dak Prescott either, right?
Not necessarily. I think it could be scheming, but you do wonder about, there's a lot of times last year where you're like, why is it all Dalton Schultz and Cedric Wilson and Tony Pollard? Like, is Dak not attacking the perimeter enough? but I think it might be scheme related. I mean, you have to manufacture touches for CeeDee Lamb.
This is
you have to.
You just
You
have
have
to. The only thing I hope for is they do not DK Metcalf him, right? Because last year you're like, how is there a world that exists where separate and apart from the quarterback conversation for Seattle, there were games last year where you're like, DK Metcalf had 1 catch on like 5 targets. The play sheet. There should be a section on the play sheet for CeeDee Lamb and DK Metcalf.
Yes.
Big corner that says DK plays must run 25% of the time. That should happen. Same thing with CeeDee Lamb.
Agree 100%. That hasn't happened so far. It has to this year.
Yeah, he needs to keep trending up. Let's talk about a couple more players that we think are trending up right now with their draft stock. Javonte Williams, looking good right now. He and Melvin Gordon combined for 24.3 points per game last year. Javonte Williams, we have had these conversations, and we heard Melvin Gordon say it last week. They want Javonte Williams to be the guy, to which we said, no duh. How high does Javonte Williams keep going currently as RB12, Mike? Is that where he should be at?
He's my RB11. I haven't really moved him all offseason. I love him. I'm in on him. I love him as a breakout player. I'm drafting him in the second round as often as I can. Nothing has changed. I've already been optimistic. I already expected this. We get some stuff right, some stuff wrong. This is a guy I've been in on, and I still feel very confident, maybe more confident than ever, that he's going to have a big breakout season. So all in on Javonte. If you can get him in round 2, you're going to feel pretty good.
Yeah, there are a couple of guys you could make the case for him ahead of that are currently ahead of him in rankings, like Leonard Fournette. What if they give some snaps to other running backs in the passing game? Rashad White, their third-round pick. Aaron Jones. What if his passing game role is in part nuked by A.J. Dillon's increasing passing game role? But for now, I think Javonte Williams is appropriately ranked as right around RB 11 or 12.
All right, what about Saquon Barkley? Because he's someone we had a lot of question marks. Mike, you're not allowed to answer this question. This one's for field only. I mean, he's been moving up, and hopefully you're looking for a better offense with Daniel Jones under center. Is he trending up?
Yeah, maybe. I think it depends. And before the show, I told you guys, like, today's going to be a show where I'm trying to put myself in, like, the seat of the person who's making the pick and living with the results throughout the year. And your emotion does matter in fantasy. If Saquon Barkley is ineffective through 4 weeks or gets hurt at some point this season, and you were the one that drafted him, it's going to be a very different feeling versus taking somebody else that maybe hasn't experienced the, I would say, either inefficient production that he has or the up and down production that he has or the injuries in the past. Like, it's just a different feeling when it happens to someone for the first time, right? Like, Christian McCaffrey was as durable as they get until he wasn't. But that first time he got hurt, no one was like, oh my God, McCaffrey got hurt. How on earth did that happen? It was like, dang, like, I can't believe he got hurt, man. This never happens to him, right? With Saquon, if it happens again, just put yourself in the situation of somebody who has him, and by week 6, he's got a sprained ankle, he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously, but you would kick yourself more than if it happened to somebody who has not yet had those durability concerns.
Yeah, and by the way, nothing has changed here for me, in my mind. Like, Matt Breida is the number 2, and which isn't, they didn't really go out and really address that backup spot. We already knew that, right?
Yeah.
And the latest report, I think it was Jordan Renan, said they want him to be, a feature back at all the time. We already knew that. Like, they tried to do that last year. They tried to do it the year before. They tried to do that the year before. We already know that.
That was
nothing
exactly
has changed.
What Joe Judge talked about when he became the Giants head coach. That was the first in the first season. When things, I know they didn't make the playoffs and they were like 6-9-1 or whatever. Like, the Giants actually fought and played tough that year, and that was the big objective. We need Saquon Barkley to be the guy. We've been down this road before. It's a matter of how much confidence do you have in him holding up or this offense getting better.
All right, another running back that has definitely been on the move. He has moved up actually 12 total ADP spots over the last 7 days here at ESPN. Travis Etienne. The hype on Travis Etienne continues to grow, currently going in the 7th round. And if you wait until the 7th round, I don't think you're going to be able to draft Travis Etienne because I think he's going before that. How much higher should he go, Mike? Or is the 7th round a good value for where you have Etienne at?
And I'll tell you what, if you're out there in like a best ball 12-team league, 3rd round.
Yeah, that's where he's going right now.
Right.
Yes.
So that's very cheap, relatively speaking. So I think where we have him is fine. I think that's appropriate. Where he's going, and if he's going in the 3rd round, it's way too early in my mind. I love the player. He was so good at Clemson. Just a terrific athlete, but I worry about 2 main things. James Robinson is way further along than we thought initially, and he's going to play a role. He's going to play in that role at some point in this backfield that I think will limit Etienne's ceiling. And we don't know, as optimistic as I am about Trevor Lawrence, we don't know if he's going to break out or how good this offense is going to be. It was really poor last year. And what if it's below average or average, with 2 running backs playing a lot? I don't know. I I think he'll be great. I think he'll play well. I think he's a good player. I worry about him living up to his extremely inflated ADP right now.
Last thing I'll say, and just you weren't there on the show the day we did this, but that James Robinson quote definitely got taken out of context. The one about him, like the expectation for him being ready for week one. Mm-hmm. Doug Peterson was definitely non-committal on that. So I don't know that he's that far ahead. Like my interpretation of that quote that spread around the internet a million times was that James Robinson is definitely not a lock to play in week one.
Sure.
And then he may need some time to get back warmed up. So I don't want to have mixed messaging here because the podcast
that was
on
not my
Thursday
intention.
or Friday. Okay.
Yeah, my intention wasn't to say that he's guaranteed to play week one, but
oh yeah, you're not spreading the rumor.
Pretty early in the season, right?
Yeah,
we expect him to play. That's
Yeah.
your most likely outcome is early in the season he'll be on the field and playing a role.
ETN is projected for 152 carries and 54 catches. Only 4 running backs hit that threshold last year.
And they were all top 10.
Yeah. So I don't know who's doing our projections or where they have Travis Etienne ranked, but I feel like that's a positive sign.
Yeah, I don't know either. But look, the reason why, I get that all the time, right? But the reason why is because a lot of guys got hurt last year, right? Or other guys might have been ahead of those 4 players in fantasy points. But again, I'm optimistic. It's just the fact that his ADP has been driven up so high. It's just a little out of control for me.
Let's talk about a wide receiver.
Player, though.
Love the player. Love the player.
Love him.
Another quick wide receiver, Michael Pittman. Right now going as wide receiver 12. He's been a top 25 wide receiver despite Indianapolis ranking bottom 7 in attempts, completions, and passing yards. You know how all those things matter for a wide receiver in fantasy, and yet he's still a top 15 wide receiver. Is Michael Pittman being undervalued with how bad the offense is, but how good he can potentially be within fantasy?
No, I mean, his ADP is wide receiver 14.
That's
I'm
where
at
you have him?
13. Yeah, I'm at 13. He was no lower than 17th in targets, catches, yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points last year, but only 39th in end zone targets. That's something you would expect to rise. There was an interesting quote from Frank Reich, which got me kind of excited a little bit about this pass offense, which is essentially you can't just play ball control and run the ball. The teams that are winning are throwing it. They want to be more balanced. I still think they lean toward the run because the line's pretty good and Jonathan Taylor is obviously terrific. But they're going to lean more on the pass, and that's a good sign for a guy like Pittman and sleepers too, like an Alec Pierce, for example. So I think he's appropriately ranked, being drafted. Wide receiver 14 is correct. I like him a lot. A terrific wide receiver too.
Yeah, no problem with that. I agree.
A couple players that we're going to talk about trending down here. Antonio Gibson, we already mentioned earlier on in the show. How about Josh Jacobs? Right now going as RB21 this last week. We saw Zamir White and Kenyon Drake get the role here in this offense. But RB21 for Josh Jacobs feels high to me. That feels like an investment in someone that I don't feel as comfortable with. Where are you at on Josh Jacobs?
I think it's about right.
Do you?
It's about right. Yeah. I mean, I said this after the Hall of Fame.
I'd rather
game,
have ETN.
Right? Like, well, I would too. It's reflected in my rankings. But once you get past, there's like a pretty slippery slope, not that far after Travis Etienne and Josh Jacobs. And this could change on a moment's notice. Josh Jacobs could be traded tomorrow to Mike's Falcons. They could acquire somebody else for that backfield. But even if other guys have a role in that backfield, one thing's clear. Josh Jacobs is way better than everybody else in that backfield right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
He's good. He's a good player.
Yeah, and I think Amir Abdullah might make the roster. Brandon Bolden will get, he'll have a weird 12% target share or something. Not that high, but he'll have some opportunities, and Zamir White will get some. But what else wouldn't surprise me? Going back to the Patriot way, a lot of their rookie running backs redshirted. Damian Harris, James White, Shane Vereen. The list goes on and on. Stephen Ridley. Josh Jacobs could have a year left of being with the Raiders and then be playing elsewhere because Zamir White's on ice during the week. So I think RB21's about right.
Agree 100%. He's their best back. I still think he's a 15-plus touch sort of guy. Should get goal line work. Amir Abdullah will probably play a passing down role, but Kenyon Drake's the guy that could be out of a roster spot right now. That's the way it's looking now based on their usage. So
finances there are tricky.
I agree 100%. It's something to keep an eye on, though. Jacobs looks like he's still going to be the guy.
Yeah,
that's been my feeling all along. I think he's a borderline RB2.
I will let you draft him. All right.
Thank you.
How about Amari Cooper? Another guy who I'm not drafting at wide receiver this year. Amari Cooper right now, wide receiver 29. With the Deshaun Watson news that he is out 11 weeks up until this point. Cooper definitely moving down my ranks because of that. How much, if at all, did he move with this news going from Jacoby Brissett for 6 weeks to Jacoby Brissett for 11 weeks now?
Yeah, down a little bit, but we were already factoring this possibility in. We knew he'd play roughly half the season with Jacoby Brissett, so I don't think it affects anything too majorly. I have him 28th, so borderline Wide receiver 3, I
He's
think
still
that's
going to
completely
finish
fair.
inside the top 30. He's never finished outside the top 30 at wide receiver, correct?
It never finished outside the top 30, right? I still think he'll be in that range. The target share should be above 20%. He doesn't have a ton of competition for targets. I saw an interview with him. They played the Eagles yesterday, and he was talking about Jacoby Brissett being a good receivers quarterback, right? Understanding that position and getting him the football. And that's key for fantasy, right? That's key. Just get the ball in his hands. We get that 1 point for the catch. We get the yards added on. We're feeling happy about that. Might not be a lot of touchdowns, but we're talking about a good football player here. And to get him as a borderline wide receiver 3, I think that's perfectly fair. It's all about market value. And I think he's right now the market is correct on him, basically.
Interesting. All right. Mike.
Yes.
Help us pay our bills.
Okay. I will do that with ZipRecruiter. Certain people just make life so much easier.
Like Field.
Like Field, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I took
Always
the words
Field.
right out of my mouth. Makes our life so easy. I don't know what I would do without him or them. It's like if you own a growing business and need to hire, ZipRecruiter makes hiring so much easier because they do the work for you. And right now you can try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. ZipRecruiter uses its powerful technology to find and match the right candidates up with your job. You can easily review these recommended candidates and invite your top choices to apply. Additionally, ZipRecruiter has a complete suite of tools that makes it easy to filter, review, and rate your candidates. In fact, the hardest thing you have to do is remember our special URL, ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. That's where you go to try ZipRecruiter for free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/FFF. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Fantasy football season is around the corner, and that means more of what you love. The teams, the rivalries, the stats, trash-talking friends, and this season, your favorite fantasy stars like Kyler Murray, Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, they all rely on body armor to get them to the next level and perform at their best and give them the trash-talking points that you need. And hey, this fall is a great time to up your game too. Maybe you're hitting the gym again, Mike.
Yeah.
Or you're just looking to stay fit, whatever your workout routine is. You're going to need to stay hydrated, okay? And Body Armor has definitely got you covered. Made with potassium-packed electrolytes, antioxidants, no artificial sweeteners, flavors, or dyes, and coconut water. Body Armor is a great option whether you're playing ball with friends, hauling coolers to a tailgate, or rooting for your team. Everybody's focused on staying active and healthy, and hydration is a massively important part of that. Body Armor Sports Drink is more than just a sports drink. Now, through November 1st, buy one Body Armor product at your local convenience store and scan the QR code in-store to enter to be one of hundreds of winners to receive $100 in DraftKings prizing. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited, open to residents of U.S. 21 and older. All right, guys. Let's talk about some stocks, some players that I am leaving drafts with. Field
Rapid
Yates.
fire style. Let's do
let's
it.
go.
Daniel.
That's
Here's the conceive. It's called Squirrel Stock. Daniel is going to convince us on certain players. We either going to buy the stock, sell the stock, or I don't know what else you can do with the stock, Mike. So we're going to buy it, hold the stock. So Daniel, you're going to take it away. The quarterback that you are leaving the most drafts with is
Russell Wilson, right now, currently QB 11 as far as our rankings in ADP. Going in the 9th round, this position is just so deep. I have tried. I've taken Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I've done a ton of drafts like that. I don't love the way that my team turns out as much as I do when I wait on quarterback. Go in on the skill position players early and grab someone like Russell Wilson, who has supported 2 top 25 wide receivers in each of the last 2 years. Get him in almost a double-digit round. That's the quarterback that I love leaving drafts with.
Look, I would generally wait a round or two and take Aaron Rodgers, so I guess I have to lean towards sell, but I'm okay on a hold here.
Yeah.
I have them one spot apart. So
I was going to say, I'm buying and selling this, right? I'm buying it because I do love Russell Wilson at current cost, but I also love Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers and Trey Lance
all
and
those
Joe
guys.
Burrow and all those guys. Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to sell it in that regard. How about the running back that you were leaving the most drafts with, Daniel?
Yeah, so in the early rounds, especially if I can make it, I love being able to grab Deandre Swift.
Okay.
I think that he is really good value right now with where he's going, running back 9, and he's been moving up. He was definitely farther down that running back board in weeks prior to this. Swift, through 11 healthy weeks last season, was running back 5.
Right.
He was unbelievable. People forget about that. This Lions team, I understand, has always been a joke, but this year I think they are going to be a better team. Do not sleep on Deandre Swift this year. And my second running back is going to be Travis Etienne. We just talked about him. There's no reason to jump all the way back in, but a pass-catching back, someone that I think is going to be utilized a lot within their offense. I love getting these two pass-catching backs in a lot of my drafts.
Yep, buying on Swift, you explained exactly why he's still going to have a huge role in that Detroit offense, which should be pretty good. Elite offensive line, so I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I'll buy that one, as we just said, selling Etienne. As opposed to him in that area, I'm going Cam Akers, right? That's one of my favorite guys this year. He's going to be a big part of that Rams offense. We've talked about him at length, but the workload, I think, will be big. Not too worried about Darrell Henderson there.
Yeah, the only thing on DeAndre Swift is I wonder if the passing game usage comes down this year because they're better and they have more pieces around him. And if it comes down a little bit,
better target share.
Yeah, and obviously eventually Jamison Williams, DJ Chark, Hawkinson will be healthy. We'll see, right? And if they're good, then they might not be passing it nearly as much as they were last season. Last year, nobody was talking about Courtroo Patterson coming into the year. People are not talking about him nearly enough coming into this year again. And he had 54 catches last year. I have him. He's a 7th round. He's currently going in the 7th round. Here's the thing about Courtroo Patterson is that in our game, he's listed as a running back. He could be a full-time wide receiver this year, and it wouldn't be like the biggest surprise of the century. He could at least be a half wide receiver, half running back. 54 catches is very much in the realm of possibilities for Courtroo Patterson going in the 7th round.
Agreed. Super undervalued.
Also, great reason why I am grabbing Tyler Algier really late in drafts. Just throwing that in.
Fine with that. Dart throw, sure.
Yeah.
5th round pick.
Yep.
Fifth round in the real draft. Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry. 5th round in the real draft. So a long shot, but yeah. LA in the backfield's wide open.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
That was so good.
Yeah, what is it? 14th round
14th round draft pick,
so,
yes.
yeah,
there we go. All right.
Field.
How about some wide receivers? I got 2 wide receivers that I really like. Do you mind?
Let's
Mike,
go.
one of them is
Please,
going to be for
go
you.
for it. Yep.
A.J. Brown.
Okay,
currently going as wide receiver 15, a guy that when you look at A.J. Brown in his career, 55th, this is the stat that you love, 55th in routes run per game since he entered the league, and yet he is wide receiver 17.
Now he plays for the Rams, so they're going to throw it a
game.
ton.
He plays for the Eagles, and they're going to throw it the same amount. However, I believe that if you trade for somebody like A.J. Brown, if you trade for A.J. Brown, you know that you've got to put the ball in his hands, period. End of story. You are looking for Jalen Hurts to be able to take the next step. And in order to do that, you need a good passing game around him.
Just like if you trade up in the first round to grab Devontae Smith last year, you have to get him the ball all the time, right?
They should.
Well, they tried.
They tried.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate
How
here.
about this? If there's a wide receiver right now, wide receiver 15, A.J. Brown, if there's someone that I think could be a top 10 wide receiver in this little grouping, I think A.J. Brown has a very clear path to be able to get there. If the Eagles utilize him correctly.
See, that's why I push back on, right? I think he's kind of lacking the ceiling of some other receivers because of the scheme, right? Because of the role.
Your team sucks. That's not my fault. Your team sucks, Mike.
Hey,
they're good.
They're
smart.
Good. That's
also.
why they have a lot of good
yeah.
time. So I'm going to sell Brown just because I prefer T. Higgins, DJ Moore, Michael Pittman. I have them all just ahead of A.J. Brown. It's close, though. So fair enough. Godwin. Did you mention Godwin?
I have not mentioned Chris Godwin yet.
Godwin, go ahead.
Surprise, Chris Godwin. Wide receiver 25. I think that's way too late for Chris Godwin. Someone that I am loving to be able to grab, especially as an injured wide receiver. I'm grabbing him based on that injury. That's why he's so down so far. Yeah. I feel confident enough in my fantasy skills that I can make sure that my team is good enough until Chris Godwin comes back, and then I got a good setup.
Drafting all offseason. Now he's confident in his skills.
Hey.
Where are you taking your skills? Miami, you're taking them to Bristol?
No, I'm going to stay in Detroit. I ain't got no reason to leave. Dan Campbell and Detroit. Listen, Tommy Kennedy. First off, I got to get me a Tommy Kennedy jersey. I got to get me a Malcolm Rodriguez jersey. There's a couple of guys I got to go.
Tommy Kennedy Farmingdale High School jersey.
That's what it is.
Right, so I'll just quickly. I'm selling it. I'm selling it. I love Darnell Mooney in the 8th round. Clear path to 150 targets. Good player.
Over Chris Godwin.
Receiver. I mean, I love Chris. I've said that a million times, but
we all have.
I'm good with it. I think over A.J. Brown though.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. All right,
we're good.
That's it. Squirrel stock.
Squirrel stock.
That's it for today's show.
Nice to sell all your stock, Daniel. What a guy.
I appreciate you guys coming and hang out with us today. We got a big week ahead of us. A whole bunch more double trouble. Basically 2.5 weeks until football starts. So tomorrow we are doing Panthers and Falcons. It is going to be me, Mike Clay, and Liz Loza joining us for Remote Field. You're off doing something else more
we have our NFL Annual Summit. It's one day a year where I'm required to not be on the show because I'm going to be in a different meeting, but I know you guys will do a great job holding down the fort, and the Panthers have a starting quarterback. The guys will dive in with Liz into who that quarterback is and what it means for the upcoming season.
for Field and Mike. My name is Daniel. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Later.
Yeah, I felt like I led into that weird.
So who's the quarterback? PJ Walker?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Really,
They actually
Steve
just
Bierlein?
no. They just traded for Will Greer.
Will Greer.
Stop it.
Got to get him back. All right.
Which one of his brothers is the one that's big on YouTube? Or both of them big on
Are
YouTube?
they? I don't know this.
Apparently.
Greer brothers?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Apparently, it was like a YouTube sensation.
Cut to Will being like, I'm in the freaking NFL. Who cares about a YouTube sensation,
No,
guys?
I'm talking like 10 million followers on like IG and YouTube.